Well, obviously the administration is keenly aware of the risk that exists in cyberspace right now. There are a number of steps that this administration has taken to improve communication between the private sector and the federal government when it comes to safeguarding cyberspace. I would point out that the stock exchange is actually an example of a private sector entity that has a strong relationship with the federal government. And one of the most important pieces, or one of the most important elements of our strategy for safeguarding the nation's computer networks from cyber threats is effective communication and sharing of information between private sector officials and the federal government, particularly those elements of the federal government that are responsible for responding to cyber threats. The New York Stock Exchange does have an effective information sharing relationship with the federal government, and I think the information that I shared with you is an indication of how valuable that kind of information sharing can be.
And given what has happened today, did the federal government take any steps to, beef up its own cybersecurity defenses or anything like that?
Well, the federal government is obviously very vigilant about the steps that we need to take to protect federal computer systems. The kind of security measures that are in place are sometimes obvious to the general public, sometimes they aren't. We also work aggressively to make sure that the kind of defenses that we have in place reflect the threats that we perceive. And this means that our security posture is continually evolving to reflect the current threat environment. I don't have any steps that we've taken at this point to tell you, but I can assure you that officials, even on days when these kinds of questions are not lingering in the air, are very vigilant about their need to adapt to an environment in cyberspace that is filled with malicious actors.
On a different subject, on the Hill today, Senator Schumer and Portman unveiled details of a plan to sort of overhaul the way U.S. companies pay taxes on foreign profits, and some of the money they would propose using for infrastructure, roads, bridges, etc. Do you have any reaction or comment on the framework that they're talking about?
Well, Senator Schumer and Senator Portman have communicated to the administration about their report, and we certainly applaud their interest in this area.
That is the White House briefing, reiterating what we've heard from other agencies at the federal level. That is no indication that malicious actors were involved in the halt here at the NYSE. Also reiterating that the NYSE has what they're calling an effective information sharing relationship.
Cautious about that until we get a little bit more information. One of the reasons why this story is gaining so much momentum is the context for...
Don't go away, because still ahead, Hillary Clinton, she came out swinging in a wide-ranging, exclusive CNN interview, how she took on her Republican rivals on immigration, plus the one candidate she wouldn't attack. We'll discuss it with our panel of experts.
And specifically the stuff about George Will and Krauthammer, you would...
$1 a month. So like...
Glitch must be affecting, when it first comes into the building, I would imagine, because otherwise they would have flipped it already.
It is. It's called the CCG. I'm going to get too into the granular of the technology.
Oh, no, please do.
But it's literally at the switch point where there's at least triple redundancy in the New York Stock Exchange systems. But part of the redundancy, quite frankly, it was introduced by our competitors in the government, saying the redundancy has to be to allow access out of the building with order flow that years, Kenny, when you and I started, would be locked down. We would have the ability to have the human intervention. That's been taken away in this whole process, where I've heard some of the SEC officials making comments about whether we should bring humans back. The humans are still here. We've never gone away. There are far fewer than there were, but that is a system where I was a human at the point of sale with my customers when we were down. I was still trading in every other marketplace that allowed me to trade, not as effectively, at a far more cost restrictive policies would be a function of the automated system, where it's payment for order flow, where we hear people coming on this show talking about how they route their orders. They get paid for their orders. They're not routing just for the goodness of their customers. They're getting paid by wholesalers.
I think we're going back to the White House briefing. The subject may have come back again.
bank there, they haven't been able to stop it. Is this on the White House's radar, and do you have any concerns about that affecting the global economy?
Jeff, the administration, particularly the Treasury Department, but also economic officials here at the White House, do closely monitor activity on global financial markets. We do live in an age where where our global financial markets are interconnected and interrelated, and activity that we do see in one market could have an impact on other markets. So that's something that we carefully monitor. In terms of assessing the impact of the volatility that we
Discussing
saw.
China, which 4 or 5 hours ago was the #1 topic on our plate. And maybe again, once this is all resolved, Bob Pisani might have some better intel on that. Bob?
Well, I've been listening to your conversation. Again, we've been trying to get a spokesman down here to give us an update. The key issue for today is the close. You can go in between the middle of the day and trading occurs outside the NYSE, not such a big problem. But for many, many organizations, the NYSE close is going to be the key point. They need that every day. They need the closing price at the New York Stock Exchange. Without that, it creates a bit of a problem. Also, we've got some reweightings going on today in some indices at the close, and that's also creating a little bit of an issue. So the key point is there's a little bit of urgency around getting to the close. Not so much between here and the close, but getting a closing price somehow. 2 points I want to bring up, and you tangentially were talking about this with Kenny. One issue is the disaster recovery. There is a disaster recovery plan, and remember, Kenny, there used to be a backup trading floor at one time, a long time ago. The plan still exists. I don't know what they call for right now, but I can pretty much assure you that one of the ideas was Archipelago would be the backup disaster recovery plan. In other words, if there was a problem on the floor of the NYSE, Archipelago, the electronic part of the NYSE, would continue trading. And in fact, in that sense, they're right. That's exactly what's happened. Whether there's a more detailed plan for disaster recovery beyond that, I'm not quite sure of. I'm checking on that. The other issue that people have come up and asked me, and I'm still trying to get answers for it, is if it is a software problem, not a cybersecurity, we assume it's a software problem, why can't they roll back to the status quo ante? In other words, software program existed yesterday. If there was a change in the software, if there was an upgrade or something that changed it, why couldn't you roll back? That may not be as easy to do as simply saying, let's roll it back, but that's certainly an issue that people are dealing with right now. And again,